This is actually something I've been thinking about lately just with the malefics in general, because we all have malefics in our chart. We all have hardships. And it's really easy to be like, oh, well, it's good that a bad thing happened to you. But it's more like bad things will happen to you. And you are ignoring the truth of life if you're trying to avoid problems. There are some things that can just suck, but I don't know if I would be who I was today if I wasn't, ostracized in middle school, if I didn't have to flail for a few years establishing my business. Like, there's something essential in that, even if it's not like I would wish that on another person.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. Today, I am doing an interview with an amazing astrologer named Chloe Margarita. She is here in studio, and we are going to be talking about something that very few astrologers really know about unless you're really deep into astrology. She's made a specialty out of what are called the fixed stars, and we will get into that. But I'm just going to introduce Chloe to you first so that you can understand her brilliance. But Chloe Margarita is an artist, poet, and astrologer living in Portland, Oregon. Her work focuses on the fixed stars, embodied practice, and re-enchanting our lives. Her book, Stellar Magic, will release with Wiser and Red Wheel in November of 2026. So please look out for that, everybody. Chloe, say hi.
Hello. I am so excited to be here and to just gab about all things stars and astrology with a new friend.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited to have you here too. Before the show, we were chatting about how I did some stalking of Chloe before inviting her onto the podcast, which was so much fun. I just thought she's just an amazing astrologer. I heard her on Threads of Fate with Kira Ryberg first, but everybody should look up her Instagram. Stellar Stars is awesome. But today we're going to get into the fixed stars. So I guess my first question for you, Chloe, is what are fixed stars?
Right. So the fixed stars are basically everything else we see in the sky that is not the planets, right? They are the constellations. They are bodies that are fixed to a certain part of the sky, hence their name, right? Planet is the Greek word for wandering star. And so they encompass a much richer, much more heavenly, far out world than the planets. Like the planets are much more earthy. They're much more about our fate and circumstances. Like, how do you make money? What is your family like? What is your body like? And the fixed stars are related to that, but I find them to be much more about our soul, our larger purpose, how we connect to the heavens. The fixed stars are less concerned with, oh, I have to go to work and make money and take care of myself. They say, okay, but you have big things you're here to do, and we're here to help you do them. And yeah, there's so much myth and poetry to them that once I started studying them, I just didn't want to stop.
Wow. So what you're saying is that they are the stars that we basically look up to and see in the sky. Stars that don't move, right? So like planets, I know they look like stars in the sky but they are moving stars. And so that's why we call these fixed stars, because they don't quote unquote move, although they do kind of rise and fall. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, throughout the day, I mean, if you were to watch the stars over the course of the night, you'd see them shift. But it's more like they live in a specific part of the sky. It's just that the earth is constantly moving.
And so you're saying that working with them has more of an alignment to like our soul's purpose. Like they're here trying to push us into what we're here to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's still a fated quality to it as well, but I find that they're very much about giving you agency. And as such, I find that Like it's a part of astrology that really asks us to put our whole selves into it, to engage and practice with them ourselves. And part of it is just the lack of literature. I mean, you can learn everything about the planets just by reading books about them, but there just aren't as many fixed star texts about them. And so they're really asking us to step into our agency and believe that we can be carried along the things that we most desire, that if there's something else kind of propelling us on a certain direction. And they give language to those intuitions and those whispers of like, I don't know why I need to take this leap of faith, or I don't know why I need to move to this random place. But if I follow that, I feel like something really big will happen. And I feel like they're often behind those little whispers.
That's so interesting because I'm sure for many people listening, this will be the first time they're kind of hearing about working with these kinds of stars because you don't usually see them when you look at a regular astrological chart. So, how do you connect with or even find out about the fixed stars?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the first place to go to figure out what stars you have in your chart is on astro.com. There is a way to calculate what is called your parans. And there's two primary ways of checking which fixed stars you have in your chart. The easier one is conjunctions, which is if you go to a website like AstroSeek, they'll have the list of, okay, like Algol, for example, is a fixed star that's at 26 degrees Taurus, right? If you have a placement, usually within 2 to 3 degrees of that degree, then that star is that's touching that planet or that placement for you. So, to do that, you take your chart and look for what are the stars at that degree. And then the other way is more complicated. It requires a computer to calculate it, which is why astro.com can pull them up for you. I also have the instructions on my website for those who want like a little taste of, what are the stars like and how do I find them out? And then from there, it's just kind of like finding research. And what I'm really about is finding a way to connect and build relationships with them yourself, because that's really where they come alive.
Yeah, like we've talked about on this podcast, archetypes and connecting with archetypes, but I've noticed in your work, I feel like you're working with these stars similarly to that, but also on a deeper level because you're doing spell work with them also and getting to know them. So for someone who might be like, how do I even get to know a star? Like, what do you mean? You're talking about working with them. Like, how would I even work with a star like this? Like, how does that work?
I'll say, first of all, like it is difficult in the sense of all of us, right, in this kind of contemporary, very secular society have been taught this idea of building a relationship with a star is nonsense. Right. And I think a lot of our natural intuition about like how to connect with the more than human has been covered over, but it's still there. So I first of all will say like research is great. Right. And a lot of my first introductions to the stars is finding all of the myths and the symbols and the little snatches of information that explain it. And so I have a lot of essays on my website, and I have essay collections there as well that kind of get into the many different facets of the stars. So, find what you can and don't be afraid to indulge the more cerebral side. But if you're like me and, you're looking, have a Scorpio stellium, you're looking for the depths, there's a sense of dissatisfaction with what's out there, because just as you can see the stars every night, like it is through introducing yourselves to them and trusting the omens and the images that come up that you really feel them deeply within you. So the first thing I would tell people if they want to connect with the fixed stars is go out at night and stargaze. Like there's no timing techniques, there's no special equipment. Just go outside and see if there's a certain star that you just keep looking at. You feel compelled to gaze at. If you want to know what the fixed star is, I use like an app that identifies the constellation. But just look up at it, notice its twinkling, its colors. How does it make you feel? What sort of images come up? You can, if you're okay feeling a little weird at first, you can be like, hey, star, like, I'm Chloe. What are you about? Do you have any messages for me? And it's just about like dropping disbelief, being open, and not explaining away if you get a message. And it takes practice to tune into it. For the first year or so of me doing this, I'm like, this is crazy. Everything I'm downloading is fake. But then, over time, you begin to see, oh no, there's something true here. So that's what I would first say is research and just go out at night and get a feel for the heavens.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I've noticed in some of your writings, you will take time with a certain star, like over, a course of weeks or whatever it is, and learn more about them and ask for their help and ask for them to like be with you in your life and kind of see how that comes together. And I mean, I don't know if you incorporate fixed stars. Don't you do flower remedies also?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you incorporate the fixed stars into that?
Yeah, so I have a couple of times, and I'm still trying to figure out the best method. But I've made a talismanic fixed star essence during a election for a fixed star Vega that I use pretty frequently. Or sometimes I always pay attention to like the time that I'm making a flower essence, and so I'll pay attention to if there's like a star conjoined the moon or conjoined the ascendant of that moment. Then I'll kind of see that fixed star energy is infused into that medicine as well. Certainly. And I think that's so helpful too, because it's like you don't have to think about it. You just take it. And how does it make you feel?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And for people who don't know what flower essences are, it's basically using the energy of a flower and infusing that in something that you could drink or that you take. It's like a remedy, but it has emotional properties or magical properties for you. Anything else you want to say about flower remedies?
Yeah, just that I really love them as someone who is an armchair herbalist, but doesn't feel comfortable prescribing actual herbs. There's no actual physical plant matter in it, right? It's just the energetics of it, like you said. So they're safe for anyone to use. And you can also make essences of plants that you couldn't actually eat, like poisonous plants. So I like them because they're gentle. They can speak to not just physical ailments, but energetic and spiritual ones, which, as an astrologer is more something I'm interested in helping my clients with. It's like, it's one thing, as I'm sure you know, to be like, oh, you have this hard transit coming up. Bye. It's another to be like, hey, maybe here's something that could be a support in that as well.
I really love that. And I love connecting to this with like working with fixed stars and getting to know stars because it reminds me of moon work. If anyone's made moon water or something like that, I think that's something else you could do. You could infuse that star's energy into some water or have that intention in that water so that you get to know them. So I guess some people might be asking like, why? Why would you want to? Why might we want to work with these stars? Why might we want to infuse them? And we could talk about some of the fixed stars in general, what they do, their purposes, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think two things come to mind is like why to work on them. And first of all is to know thyself, right? To give a language to something that all of us feel inside. Like I can't tell you how many fixed star readings I've given, and it just feels like I'm giving people the words or their permission to be who they are and to do things their way. And so I find a profound comfort when I'm struggling to realize, oh, like actually this struggle is not a problem. This is just what I need to face to like be on the stellar path that I'm on, that the fixed stars in my chart have provided me with. But I think in terms of practicing with it, I mean, you should practice with them because it works. I've done it myself and done quite a bit of magic with them. And what I really like about fixed star magic, first of all, is that it's extremely approachable. Like you don't need a lot of fancy equipment or to buy a lot of stuff. Like they're not really interested so much in that. It's more like your attention and presence. And what I like too is because just right in the ordering of things, right, the fixed stars are farther out towards the heavens than the planets. I find that they work on a much more like long-term rooted time scale than the planets do. So they're not necessarily going to be as loud at first, and they're not necessarily going to give you exactly the thing that you want. They're going to give you what you actually need. So I find a lot of trust in working with the fixed stars because, that thing of like, be careful of what you wish for, you just might get it sort of vibe. Like, I feel like the fixed stars kind of avoid that where they're like, okay, you want love. I'm not going to help you get that person because that's not where the love is. I'm going to make sure you do all the work so you have the foundation so you can actually bring in and accept the love that is for you. And that takes time and that takes humility, but it's better than spending years with someone who I got just because I wanted it, right? And then like, that's not actually where the love is. Like they work on truth, not on delusion, let's say.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love that concept of them working on truth and not delusion. And I want to ask you about a few stars to learn more about them. But I think we should start with Alpheka because she's the reason I reached out to you and found you. So do you want to chat about her?
I would love to. love her so much. She's the star that I probably have like the most consistent relationship with since the beginning of last year. I've done some sort of ritual with her every month when the moon conjoins her. So that's another thing I'll add in. It's generally considered a good time to work with the star too, of when the moon is aspecting its zodiacal degree. So Alpheka is at 12 degrees Scorpio. So when the moon is around 12 degrees Scorpio. But the way I put it is she demonstrates that like it is spiritual to be like, a silly, foolish romantic, to love, to love beauty, to love pleasure and connection. And she's really about how do we do that in a way that is sustainable and doesn't take away from our purpose.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think it's so interesting because I feel like as I've been learning more from you about the fixed stars, for me, it feels like these pieces that you just can't get with regular astrology. Like I felt the same way when I was learning about decans. At first when you're like, oh, you're a Taurus or you're this or you're that, and you learn those things, and those things may be fitting to you. But then when you take it into decans, it's like, no, it's this kind of thing for you. And it can open up so much more for you. And I was drawn to your Instagram, and the first thing I saw was your post about Alpheka, and I am a 12-degree Scorpio rising. And I felt like she explained so much for me. Like, oh my goodness, my rising is exactly conjunct this. I mean, I can't say it's exact to the minute, but exactly conjunct this fixed star. And you were explaining about her being about love and heartbreak. And she has that little bit of like the heartbreak comes before the love. And it just reminded me so much of my story with my husband. And for people who don't know, I had a lot of breakups. Like I dated a lot of guys. I had a lot of breakups before I dated Moth and before we got married. And also right before we got married, I had a broken off engagement basically. And it was really hard. It was really rough. And I just like did not understand it. And I felt this little voice just say, after we broke off our engagement, just keep your heart open. Keep your heart open. And I was like, no, I can't. How can I do that? How can I keep my heart open? I can't do that. Like it hurts so bad, it hurts so bad. And I went through a lot of iterations of boyfriends in between that moment, through the next year before really connecting with my husband. And when we connected, I was dating somebody else and he was terrible for me. And we broke up, and it was the weekend that we broke up that I connected with my husband. We had known each other for a couple years. I was his TA in a class, and I had this breakup and no one was home because it was a long weekend. And then I just had this feeling like, you need to call Timothy Richards. You need to call him. And I was like, no, like, why? Like, we're friends, but we're not like that close of friends. Like, I don't want to tell him about my breakup. But finally, the push, I called a bunch of other people. He was the only person who picked up and answered my call. And basically, you can see where the story goes through there. We hung out for like 6 hours and just, we were best friends. And then we became lovers, right? Like we became lovers, and we just knew we were going to get married. And we have like such a strong relationship. Like his part of fortune is conjunct Juno, and his Juno is conjunct my sun. So like that marriage, for people who don't know, Juno is about marriage and your marriage partner and money and things like that. And so he's right conjunct my sun, and I have my Juno, which is trine his sun. So it's just like all these things coming together for us, and we've had like such a strong marriage. And so when I saw your post about her, I was like, oh my goodness, this is explaining our love story. And on another level, it also explained to me, I mean, I feel like I'm a second decan Scorpio rising, which in my opinion, people always are surprised I'm a Scorpio rising. Everyone's always like, what? You're not a Scorpio, right? Like, what? This doesn't seem like you. You don't seem like a Scorpio. And I felt like Alpheka also double explained that for me. Yeah. So tell me why. Why does this connect to Alpheka?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it comes through the myth that is associated with this star. So, Alpheka is the primary star in Corona Borealis, which is the flower crown, northern crown constellation. And it is particularly the flower crown given to Ariadne by Aphrodite upon her marriage to Dionysus. But we first meet Ariadne as the holder of the thread in the myth of Theseus, who is this warrior who was brought into the labyrinth where this man beast, the Minotaur, lives, right? Which is actually, Ariadne is the princess of this land. The Minotaur is her half brother, but she falls in love with Theseus at first sight and allows him to be victorious, to slay this monster. And then she basically gives up everything, runs away with him, and then he abandons her on an island in Naxos. So first of all, right, the first step of this star of love is a realm of what feels like complete desolation. Like, how are you supposed to meet another guy on an island? And then literally divine intervention, right? A god, the god of wine and revelry, Dionysus, says, no, you will be my wife. And so he marries her, right? And I think it's interesting too that she goes from doing the most for a dude who leaves her to literally just doing nothing. And a god is like, let me worship you. And then, her crown goes up to the sky because it's like there's this eternal divine love happening. And so, like you said, I really find with the fixed stars, they work in dualities. Like for every star that's about love, there will also be heartbreak because again, that is the journey we need to go through to actually appreciate love and to be able to love in the way that Alpheka wants you to. Because there's another piece here, especially thinking about her being this holder of the thread through the labyrinth. She really is also about relationships being a form of not like moving away from ourselves, but getting deeper into our own maze. And partners should be that mirror or that walker in the depths. And right, Dionysus is a really interesting god to be married to because he's it's one of the only male gods who's never been adulterous. He has never mistreated or assaulted a mortal woman, and he's an androgynous god. He's a man, but most of his supplicants are women, and he often has a sort of like in between look. And so there's really something here about relationships are about allowing you to embody many different parts of yourselves and a form of self-discovery rather than like, oh well, I'll just be with my partner and then I don't have to worry about any of my stuff anymore. So yeah, it takes a lot of self-honesty. And that was literally the first 6 months of me working with Alpheka. Was not dating at all, was not trying to date. It was really getting to know myself and also reconnecting to my network because love with Alpheka is self-love. It is communal love. It is creative love. It is not just one particular person.
That's really beautiful because my next question was going to be I would love to learn more about your experience with her because it's not like she's conjunct your rising, but she's had a big effect on you.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about the fixed stars too is that you don't need a natal connection to work with them. Like, it's also funny, my progressed chart right now has my moon and Jupiter on Alpheka, so it was definitely the right time. But I really find that, like, whereas you didn't have to do any magic, you just lived it out. It's more like if I want Alpheka in my life, I have to work for it. But yeah, it was really at the beginning of 2025, I had, exited a relationship that felt like particularly bad. And at that point, I felt like, there was kind of an upward trajectory. Things were getting better each time, but this one really shook my confidence. And so I was like, okay, first of all, I want some help. So I'm going to call in some help. But then there's also a deeper part of me that's like, okay, I love talking about making magic with the stars in theory, but if I'm actually going to tell other people to do it, I actually have to try for myself and see if it works. So that was kind of my thing is like, I'm going to work with her. And if she gets me a partner, then maybe there's something to this. But there's a lot of trust that needed to happen because, like I said, for the first 6 months of me practicing with her, which is literally, every month I would take myself out to dinner or I would do something cute with her after doing some sort of just basic ritual and invocation. It was just like I had no desire to go on any apps or to try dating. And there was a lot of tension around that. I was like, am I wasting my time? Am I missing out? But I was like, no, I just need to trust her. She really wants me to focus on cleaning my apartment and working on my business and focusing on my friends. And then so finally, about end of May, June last year, I was like, okay, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't feel super optimistic, but I feel like things are pointing me to just see what's out there. So, Julie, the first night, the first person I matched with, I am now been dating for a year.
My goodness. Wow.
Yeah. Felt like I cheated the system. I was like, what are the odds that the first person I talked to after months of not even trying is like still such an unbelievable person in so many ways and very much fits into like the Dionysus archetype, I will say, and has like a Saturn Alpheka Paran, but it's not just having this person enter my life, but the profound healing and growth that they provided has been incredible. Like I'm still in awe of that. But also just like the way it changed my relationship to my whole romantic ecosystem that I called it. It was really crazy. After a few months, I didn't even have to plan out activities. I would just have friend hangouts or birthday parties just happen to be on the day when the moon was conjoining Alpheka. And so it felt like years after the pandemic of having like social anxiety come back, it just felt like such a seamless flow and entrance back into socializing and also just beauty and adornment, like, just feeling myself and dressing up and enjoying flowers and flower essences, obviously, are, I feel like, a huge Alpheka thing as well. So it's like, and now that I'm not dating anymore, it's like I still do my monthly rituals with her out of gratitude, but also like I see it to just like re-up my love juice, make sure everything's copacetic. And yeah, I'm remembering because, I'll say I have Saturn in the seventh house. Relationships have historically been a struggle for me, that, just to remember the sweetness and that actually everything is fine.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I love this. I love this for you. Like, I'm so happy.
My love life is literally night and day since working with her. And that's what I love so much about working with the stars is like, sure, you can talk in theory about what they're about, but when you have direct experience of their magic, no one can take that away from you.
Yes. It's very real. And I had a similar experience, but with Hecate. So a completely different flavor. Love her, right? Like, love her so much. But I also was going to say, it's so funny too, because like for me, having her conjunct my rising sign, I literally love flower crowns so much. I wore a flower crown at my wedding. I like love flowers. I love silly dresses and silly things and like beauty. And it's just so fun to see how it plays out in our lives so seamlessly. And I love this idea of like, you can bring it into your life. If you're like, oh my goodness, I need that. I need to bring it into my life. It's very possible for you. And I think you're just a testament of that, how beautiful that relationship is. I was wondering, I guess this is a good time to introduce people to the concept of a heliacal rising star. So what's a heliacal rising star? Like, because, we do have fixed stars that most likely most people will have at least one or two fixed stars conjunct something in their chart. But also,
Right.
There's a heliacal rising fixed star people can have, which is different than your regular rising sign. So let's chat about that.
Yes. So just to, clarify, because this is often a question that comes up, rising doesn't have to do with your rising sign in the sense of like it's conjoined, right? That's different than you having Alpheka conjoined your ascendant. Rising sign has to do with stellar phase. And yeah, bear with me, it's a little technical, but it's basically this idea that fixed stars, as, the sun moves throughout the sky, right? Some stars you can't see at certain times of the year because they only rise during the day. So the sun is blocking that out. So the heliacal rise is the star's first appearance as it's rising. So it's just separated enough from the sun that we can see it rising again. And so it's kind of seen as like a yearly rebirth of the star. And so depending on your birthday and location, the last star to make that stellar phase heliacal rise, the last star to reappear at your birth location is considered your particular heliacal rising star. And just to sum it up, your heliacal rising star is like the foundational star in your chart. It is the star that holds your purpose. You can compare it to the Greek idea of the daimon, which is sort of like the tutelary spirit that guides us on our path. And because it's one of the only stars, along with the heliacal setting, that's not attached to another planet or part of your natal chart, you are going to get the full spectrum of experiencing it. Versus if you have a star in parental your Venus, right, you're going to experience it in a Venusian way. But this is like you're here to experience and embody all of the facets of this one star.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I know you have been working with your heliacal rising star as well. But can we look at like, what does that look like for you? And, or let's look at also, what are some examples we could pick up so people can understand how this works?
Totally. Yeah. So my heliacal rising star is the royal star Antares, which is the heart of the scorpion. And so being a royal star, there's 4 of them, and they're each supposedly supposed to bring down power and fame and imminence. I have a whole class series on them, actually. But that's the thing about why I need to look into the stars themselves, because I'm like, okay, but so many people have royal stars in their chart and they're not immediately successful and famous, but they each have a specific path and a specific style of attaining power. And Antares, being the heart of the Scorpion, is a much more shadowy, intense, chthonic form of power. Literally, like one of its meanings is anti-Ares, the enemy or the opposition to Ares, the god of war. So fighting and conflict and grit is a huge theme. And I'm not someone who's super drawn to conflict, but I felt like I've had to do a lot of fighting and independent agency to get where I need to go. Like the way that Antares gains power is following your desires with no support until it works. And so like I grew up in like a, affluent but very normative suburban town where everyone seemed to have the same idea of what their life wanted to look like. And I was like, I'm not going to do what's safe or comfortable. Like, I want to work for myself. I want to follow my dreams and my heart. And I have no idea how that's going to happen. I don't have any connections or support in any of these realms. But if I just put my head down and work enough, then it'll happen. And that's exactly the truth. Anytime I've tried to not work for myself, it's failed. This is the only thing that's ever worked for me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which feels very Antares of just the audacity of like, well, I want it. I'm going to do it. It's done. But there's also like a very sensitive, tender part to it, right? It's the heart of the Scorpion. And so there's a lot about vulnerability and softness and emotions. And it is kind of a relational star in the sense of like I wouldn't prescribe to people, oh, you want to find a partner, like work with Antares, because it's more like, for as strong and defensive as the star can be, the real antidote to that often very like self-oriented single-mindedness is relationships where you can be vulnerable and where you can open yourself up, and relationships that ultimately help you stay in touch with your truth. Because it does have kind of that Scorpio vibe of, transformation and obsession and death and then things being born again. But like what I see again and again is like, I'm so good at, saying goodbye to one era and completely burning everything up and then moving on. But Antares, like the deeper lesson is like, okay, but what is worth sticking it out with? What is it worth feeling it through rather than just cutting and running? So those are just some things that I think about Antares, but it's basically like, why am I like an intense, private, but also extremely vulnerable and passionate person? It's because of Antares.
So fascinating. Where's that degree again?
10 degrees Sagittarius.
Okay, 10 degrees Sag. So she is actually quite close to your sun.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Wow. How interesting. That's fascinating. Like when you talked about royal stars, because I think the lore about royal stars, for anyone who knows about it, like you said, is if you have a royal star, then you're going to be famous, you're going to be rich, you will be given success. And so it's interesting that, like you said, not everybody who has a royal star is instantly successful. But it sounds like for you, at least in your shape, I mean, I think you're successful and you will be very successful. Yes. But it sounds like with a royal star also, there is kind of this like success unto yourself, finding sovereignty, right? Like this sovereignty piece. And maybe that's just Antares, but from what I've studied about the royal stars, it seems like each of them is this kind of how to find success for yourself sovereignty piece. Okay.
Yeah. Like the phrase I like is it's a success pattern. Like, when I was younger, it's really easy to be like, oh, I wish I was a different way, right? I wish that I could find institutional support, right? I wish that I, felt like there were people out there who could help me find what I need to find. But ultimately, to become the person that Antares needed me to be, it's like I needed to figure it all out myself, and not seeing that as a problem or a hindrance, but it's actually the freedom and the independence it gives me. Like I was just talking about this with my dad, who I'm pretty sure also has points conjunct Antares. He also works for himself. And it's like, yeah, it's like you have to do all of it yourself, but I wouldn't give that up for anything, because this is the only way that I know how to be.
That's so fascinating. Well, my North Node is conjunct on Antares. I'm 11 degrees Sag. Yeah, isn't that funny? So there you go. Working for ourselves over here. And also, I kind of wanted to dispel a myth. I mean, I guess it's not a myth, because some of these stars are really hard. Like Antares is viewed as a tough star. And I guess we should talk about Algol, because she is often viewed as the most difficult. 26 degrees Taurus. So if you have anything 26 degrees Taurus or near there, this is for you. But let's talk about her. I mean, we can talk about Antares as well, because I think she is similar in this piece. But let's talk about, what is it like to have a hard start? What if you have a hard start,
Well, I mean, yeah, that is the truth. I'll also say Algol is my heliacal setting star. So, very, very intimate with her. And yeah, and I think it goes to show, if you have a placement, you're 26 degrees Taurus, you're not going to be a typical Taurus, right? Because Algol is the head of Medusa. So she is the decapitated head of this snake-haired woman who could turn people to stone. And if you read any literature about her, it's like, this is the most malefic star in China. Her name translates to piled up corpses. She is associated with beheadings and death and murder. But it's even within that, when I first read the description of her, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I love this bitch. Like, that is my version of femininity. I want to be this powerful, sensitive, passionate woman that you don't fuck with.
Preach.
Like, I was even just talking about this the other day. Like, I love being a woman. It's just all of the misogyny that makes it not great. And that's kind of her vibe. Because I think the reason that, Algol has a bad rap is because, to me, she's the star that you have to approach with the most respect, because her whole life is abuse and disrespect, right? Her whole story is that she was assaulted by Poseidon. Athena gets mad at her and turns her into a Gorgon. And then she's just minding her own business in a cave. And Perseus is like, well, I want to marry Andromeda, so I'm going to use your head to defeat this monster. So she's a very strong star. Her talismanic uses are like extreme protection. Like, the only time I've ever invoked her is to get my friend out of an abusive situation. But because she's faced so much hardness in her life, if you don't approach her with a lot of respect and softness and deference, then yeah, you might get a little slap on the wrist. Again, it's not fear-mongering, but when you're dealing with hurt and trauma, there's more asked of you to find softness amidst that. And that's kind of the vibe I have. It's like, how do you find softness? How do you find creativity and wisdom when the world just continually beats you down?
Yeah, so true. I think that's so real. And I mean, she becomes part of Athena later, like all of those pieces. So protection really is part of her vibe. But like you said, you could get your head chopped off if you're not respectful. I mean, in an energetic way, so to speak, or you might feel like you got your head chopped off, I guess, energetically sometimes.
It's like, just, if you're misogynist, don't talk to her,
Right.
sort of vibe. But she's also so helpful for wisdom and creativity as well. Like, I mean, the gaze of Medusa is often associated with a lightning strike. And Algol is often present in big advancements in technology, and even vaccines too, being this really controversial, when they first came about, right? A dude just injected his baby with smallpox. With cowpox, and then it turned out he was right. But those sort of really lightning fast discoveries are also very Algol. But I find she is the tradition of making something creative or beautiful out of your hardships. So if you're wanting to process something that has happened to you, and who hasn't had something happen to them, she will be that protection and that inspiration as well.
So fascinating. How interesting. So hard stars, like you said, there's a balance, difficulty, but there's always more to the story and always more to what they're doing for you in your life. There seems to also be lessons, right, with each of these stars. Like with Regulus, it's like, if you're going to be pompous, then you will have downfall, kind of a thing. With other ones, it's about being loyal and having loyalty. So it seems like the fixed stars are also here to teach you lessons and that balance.
Yeah, I really see them as their guides in helping us walk a certain process. And yes, all of them are also assigned different planetary natures. So planets that have a malefic as their nature, like Antares is Jupiter, Mars, right? You're going to get Mars somehow. And so I think it's stars that are considered hard. You just have to, for better or for worse, right? Enter into situations that don't feel good to become the sort of person who the stars want you to become, right? So Antares, for example, being a Mars Jupiter star, there has to be opposition or things standing in your way or being misunderstood is yeah, that's a feature, not a bug of the process. And I think it's also we aren't just born royal, right? As I've been kind of saying, it's more we are forged through audacity and adversity. And this is actually something I've been thinking about lately, just with the malefics in general, because we all have malefics in our chart. We all have hardships. And it's really easy to be like, oh, well, it's good that a bad thing happened to you. But it's more like bad things will happen to you. And you are ignoring the truth of life if you're trying to avoid problems. There are some things that can just suck, but I don't know if I would be who I was today if I wasn't, ostracized in middle school, if I didn't have to flail for a few years establishing my business. Like there's something essential in that, even if it's not like I would wish that on another person.
Hi, it's Kaylee. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you already know about the feminine power line. Black Moon Lilith, the Eve point, that axis in your chart that holds both the exiled feminine and the desiring feminine. You know the words, but there's a difference between knowing the words and actually turning the light on. The Feminine Powerline self-paced course is where that happens. It's not a lecture, it's an experience. Guided journeys, somatic reflections, and a full reference library of interpretations for your exact placements, so you can sit with your own chart and actually feel what's been living there. Feel it and reclaim it. Women who've gone through the course say the same thing. I didn't expect it to hit that deep. The first 25 students get founding student pricing at $97. After that, it's $147. You can find the link to check it out and to purchase in the show notes of this episode. If the feminine power line has been calling you, this is where you answer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that we can see that play out over people's lives as well, and how their heliacal rising star, setting star, and the stars show up for them. I know you have a free class about fixed stars and you use some examples. Do you mind chatting a little bit about those examples? Unless there's another one that you're like, oh, this is a better one. I'd rather talk about this person today.
No, this is great. No, I'm happy to, because these are artists that I think a lot about. So in my class, I kind of show in action how the fixed stars in one's chart plays out and shapes person's soul and their life. And so I primarily focused on the nativities of Kendrick Lamar and Octavia Butler, because they have the same heliacal rising and setting stars. So their heliacal rising star is Aldebaran, another royal star. It is the eye of the bull. And Aldebaran's form of royalty is extremely earthy. Is it extremely practical and land-based? I love working with Aldebaran if it's just like, I want to establish a routine. I want to work hard and I want to play hard, right? In some ways that kind of feels similar to the Taurus archetype. And so something that I see with both of these people is, first of all, a really strong connection to earth and the land, right? Kendrick Lamar is an artist who came from Compton, California, and that shapes a lot of his point of view and his art, versus Octavia Butler, who is a science fiction author, who a lot of her books are about, okay, a natural disaster or an apocalypse happened. How do we then return to the earth and survive by cultivating the land and being in community together? Because it's not just land that Aldebaran is about, it is community, and how does your effort benefit the whole? Another Aldebaran example that I love is Zoran Mamdani, who has both of Aldebaran and Paran to both of his benefics. And he's so popular because he loves New York so much, and he explicates just kitchen table issues like fixing potholes and universal pre-K, things that make people's lives better in a very practical way. But it's also a star of extreme work and effort, right? There's this line from Menelaus, this ancient astrologer, that Taurus natives will be the first to put a yoke on their shoulder and plow the land. And so what you see with Aldebaran people is they're extremely prolific. Kendrick Lamar is not so much, in the tabloids, he's not giving interviews, but his work speaks for himself. And same with Octavia Butler. I mean, she only died in her 60s and she has released dozens of books. And so it's, again, Beyonce is another Aldebaran person. It's just the work is the talking with these people.
That is fascinating. That's so interesting to see how it plays out in two totally different ways. But you can see how they're following that heliacal rising star. Can I just ask you about a couple stars? Just because I think people are probably fascinated by these stars and interested in them. So let's talk about Spica. I'm curious about Spica because always looked at as the best, at least I think one of the best stars to have riches, glory, blah, 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 blah. So where's she at? How do people connect with her? What's she about? Also downsides.
Yeah. So of course, always, right? So Spica is at 24 degrees Libra. She is the sheaf of wheat in the hand of the Virgo or Maiden constellation. And sort of the first way I learned about her, which I think is still a core meaning of her, is she helps you cultivate talent and brilliance. Right. She's a star of many skills and being rewarded for those extreme skills. And it's really anything you can put your mind to. So literal farm and agricultural work, writing and creativity, computer work. There's a lot to do with religion and spirituality. But again, she's not you're born and then you have all these talents. It's the potential to be in the process of cultivating something so deeply and so diligently that it becomes genius. A tension with Spica, though, is the relationship between incubation and privacy and like, when is your thing right to be put out into the world? And there's a few reasons for that. One is, kind of like the actual Virgo sign. There's this thing of meekness or over perfection with your work. So Menelaus has this line that Spica puts a muzzle on the mouths of the natives, because it's like they're afraid to speak, because in part there needs to be some protection around what they're cultivating. Like one of my favorite Spica native examples who has this as their Heliacal rising star is Frank Ocean. He creates an album on his own time and he does it his own way. And it takes him a decade, but then it's like the album of the decade, because like Spica needs space away from other people, from other influences to develop their craft and to develop their ultimate great work. But it's about, okay, when does that privacy become you're just avoiding problems or not wanting to get into the nitty gritty of bringing this out into the world and dealing with the reception? Because, she's really associated with Astraea, who was this goddess who was said to take her own life because she was like, I hate this, everything's becoming too fast paced and sinful and away from the divine. So again, the relationship between the ideal and the real is, I feel like, a constant tension with those touched by this star.
Do you know her degree in Virgo?
She's actually in Libra, 24 degrees.
Yeah. 24 degrees of Libra. How interesting. It's fascinating because that is my husband's Heliacal rising star. And it's so funny because he is like an incubator. He's a writer. He's been writing these books and incubating all of them for so long. So I just told him, like, hold on. It's just going to take some time for this to happen, for this to come to you. I'm curious about Sirius, because Sirius is not technically a royal star, is it? No, but it's the brightest star that we have. So let's talk about Sirius. Cancer, 14 degrees Cancer, right?
So actually, I love, there's so much I could say about Sirius. And the first thing I'll say is Sirius is perhaps the hardest star to understand because it's the brightest. Like, it's so big and vast that it contains so many different opposites. And it's at once so heavenly and so spiritual, but it's also so earthy and embodied, right? It's the dog star, right? In some ways, Sirius is a dog. If you want to understand Sirius, spend time with dogs, right? But it's also the star that will take you from an individual and make you into some big, giant figurehead. I actually, a month ago, released a whole lecture series on Sirius with a friend because there's just so much to it. And Jupiter had just stationed direct on Sirius. But on the one hand, it's a star that will help you find your purpose, in the most rarefied way. This is a star that's so, to me, it's kind of like the archetypal star. So I really see it as if you really want to get the full initiation into the fixed stars, talk to Sirius. But it's also a star that's extremely embodied and extremely chthonic. So working with Sirius has actually not just helped me dispel fear around embodying my purpose, but it's actually helped in my relationship with my body and my pleasure. And just staying present inside of my body and integrating spirit and matter together. And so Sirius is good for anything for to be completely honest, if you want to have better sex, talk to Sirius. If you want to feel better in your body, but also have a helper on your higher spiritual journey. If you want help with witchcraft, with protection, Sirius is also associated with Hecate. So if you want to do some transgressive stuff over here, talk to Sirius. Sirius to me is also a love and relational star, but it's also a star of why are you here? And how can you go about doing that and dealing with all the vagaries and the conflict that comes about?
Yeah. And that brings up such a good point about these stars. You could kind of, I mean, not that you completely need to divide them up, but you could divide them up into like, these are more career stars. These are more relationship stars, working through them. And I'm sure in your course and in your book, you go through all of those things, which is amazing. And I wanted to ask you, are there any stars that you want to tell us about that we shouldn't leave out? I do have a couple more questions about you, but it's a little change of subject. So I wanted you to be able to chat away.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only one that comes to mind, because I feel like this is one of the most approachable and just multi-purpose, is Dina Belgeti, which is the tail of the Capricorn constellation, the goat constellation. It's about 23 degrees Aquarius. And it is like, whereas Algol is like the most extreme protective star, Dina Belgeti is such an approachable protective star, like in everything from protecting your home. So like when I'll clean my apartment, I'll smudge, put some smoke around, and I'll invite Dina Belgeti to energetically protect the home. If you need protection in relationships or boundaries, Dina Belgeti is a great place to start. But basically, if you want to have like a container of protection for your life while also like helping like be an adult and have integrity, then talk to Dina Belgeti, because a lot of their thing is like, if you have integrity, if you have values, you will be protected from a lot of bullshit. So I think it's any person can approach them, and I find them extremely generous. Don't be surprised if you start a ritual and they're like, okay, you need to clean your altar first, though. Like, they want you to, the little grandfatherly energy, but they're not going to hurt you. They're just like, I respect you and I want you to respect yourself.
That's hilarious. I love that. I was thinking, isn't there a star in the Pleiades constellation? Like, do you do this with constellations in general as well? I feel like each star, though, has its own jam.
Yeah, well, that's like my eternal project is there's like roughly 70, 80 stars that are the brightest that have been given a lot of space in Bernadette Brady, who kind of is the helm of the fixed star revival we'll talk about. But there's all these other like dimmer stars that have names, but no research into them. And yeah, like you said, each star in a constellation, I mean, they have similar vibes. But what I'm really interested in is all of the unspoken stars and what they add to, our understanding of this base archetype. So yeah, there's a lot. Part of the reason I want people to study the fixed stars is there's a lot to cover, and it can't just be me.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, there's so many fixed stars. So how do you choose who to work with? And also, how many are in your book? Like, how many are you going over? Do you know?
Yeah. So in my book, I focus specifically on 15 what are called the Bohemian stars, which are the fixed stars that have been highlighted the most in literature throughout history. So most of the ancient fixed star texts we have are actually magical talismanic texts that tell you how to make like a gem talisman with the star for specific attributes. And it's always these 15 stars that are highlighted. And there are a lot of stars we've talked about already. So Sirius, Spica, Aldebaran, Antares, Regulus, Dina Belgeti are all Bohemians. So I started with them because there was a lot more to build on. Like I didn't have to find plant or gem correspondences for them. Like there was a lot to work with. But yeah, that is my eternal question, Julie, is which fixed stars to study next? Because there's so many. I want to do a deep dive on all of the ones mentioned in Brady's book, but I'm also really interested now in the lunar stations, which are, 28 or to 27, depending on your system. Like they're a lunar calendar, right? And so each day the moon is in a different station, but each station is determined by an indicator star. So you mentioned like the Pleiades. So that's the third lunar station is determined when the moon is near the Pleiades, she's in the third lunar station. And there's a lot of lunar station stars that are not talked a lot about in literature. So I just, out of compulsion, a few months ago, I was like, I really want to get into Hummel, which is the primary star in the Aries constellation. It's the head of the ram. And then I was like, oh, there's actually these three other stars in the Aries constellation, Sheraton, Mesarthim, and Botine, that are indicator stars for lunar stations, but there's nothing else on them. So might as well go into them. And then it's like, oh, well, these are the stars that indicate the first two lunar stations. So I better just go through all of them. So I'm kind of always back and forth. But I think I'm going to focus on these lunar station stars too, just because there's some that are well known, like Spica is a lunar indicator star. But then there are more obscure ones like Swallowson, who is the dolphin star, who is an indicator star. And there's just not enough on that. So that's the thread I'm currently following.
Wow, I love that. Like all of these little threads, you just like, oh, I want to know. What does that mean? How does that work? I love that you're doing this work. I love that this is the focus that you've taken because someone needs to take it, someone needs to work with it. And I love seeing how you weave all these pieces together so beautifully. And for people who don't know, something else that Chloe does is she works with fashion and your fashion sense. And yes, you're looking at your chart and things like that. And I was curious, have you been using the fixed stars in that piece of your work as well?
Yeah. So great question. I feel like this is something I've been circling for a while, and it's something that I really need to spend dedicated time on because, like, as you probably know, just as people don't typically see you as a Scorpio rising, you know, Scorpio style, right, which is very much based on Mars, is going to look really different if you have Scorpio placements near the flower crown star, right? That's going to make your vibe maybe more feminine and less edgy than, having a Scorpio placement in general. But yeah, it's something that I can kind of see in bits and pieces with like Spica, for example. Spica is at the end of Libra, but it's the Virgo star. And so Libra is the home of Venus, right? There's a lot to do with balance and proportion. But with Spica, you're going to see maybe more of like a spareness, a much more basic or uniform style. But what I would really need to do is like poll people who have significant placements near these stars and see how it actually plays out. Because I can theorize about it all day, but it's all about like, how do, Spica people actually dress? Same as like, how do Jupiter people actually dress? Like finding it in practice is like where it really like comes alive. Like the aesthetics of the stars is something that I really need to get into.
How fascinating. That's so interesting. And I bet as people learn more about the fixed stars, they'll be able to kind of start to see some of those pieces for themselves. And I think like listening to what you have said too, for people who are more curious about the fashion side, if you go to Chloe's YouTube, she has a whole lecture on it and a course, right?
I have I do fashion consults where we look at your chart and I talk about what fashion I see through that. And I also have 3 guidebooks where I go through both the style of the planets and then I go through how to delineate your chart to find your iconic style. And then the third one, which was a true labor of love, is I studied Venus through all of the 36 decans. And I looked through the threads of like, okay, if you have Venus in Cancer 1, this might be the way you want to dress.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. It's so exciting. Yeah. And I feel like part of what I've gleaned for you for people who like want a taste of this or want to think about this is a lot of times you want to look at the ruler of the sign that you're looking at, like of your rising particularly, but also like sun and moon and other places Venus will play a part into it. But yeah, so like someone who's a Scorpio rising, that Marsian thing really does play, even though I also love flower crowns and I love florals. I love florals, but I do have like an edgy look too that I will put on, or like a modern, edgy, geometric pattern kind of things that I do. So I love seeing how both of those come together. But I'm also a Venus and Taurus girly. It is Taurus 3, so it's a little different. It's a little Saturnian. It's a little business over there. But I think all those pieces play out together. So super cool learning about that with you. Super cool seeing those threads. What is your rising? Oh, you're a Leo. You're a Leo rising.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the most interesting pieces of self-discovery, thinking about like astrology and fashion is, what is normally considered fashionable is very different than my definition. Because like Venus at her core wants to look good and feel good, but she wants to blend in. She wants to fit in with the vibe. Being ruled by the sun, I'm always asking, how can I show up and show out and like be the most like visible? How can my clothes speak for myself? Such a Leo rising thing. I really see me putting on a fit as a form of service because it makes other people happy. Like I love when people stop me and they're like, I love your outfit, or like, wow, my sun is conjoined Mars. So I almost get like competitive. I'm just like, why don't other people show up and show out? Like I'm just putting in all this effort and no one else is matching it. But that is the nature of the sun, is like with fashion. It's like, that is how I distinguish myself. And that is how I do the most. So that's what I'm always trying to do, is like, how can I do the most. And yeah, that's just, and knowing that like everyone has different things they want to express through fashion and they're all okay. It's just about whatever makes you feel most yourself.
Do you think that this is also elemental? Like watery people have similar styles, fiery people have similar styles.
Mm, I think so. I mean, again, it's something that I'd have to look at. But yeah, like, I mean, with fire, right? It is passionate, it is extreme, it is intense. So, I mean, I definitely see fire people wanting to be more loud with their dressing, maybe more controversial, whereas like water is going to be maybe much more based on mood. Earth signs, it's much more about like the basics, having the staples, being practical and being able to move and fitting the role that you are trying to embody.
Water. I feel like water is like more flowy, like more of the
More
flow.
flowy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can definitely be, interested in comfort as well. And then air sign, I noticed it's a lot about balance and proportions. Like, how do the different elements of an outfit play together? And yeah, is there a certain like idea or identity are they trying to explore or try on with their looks as well?
I love that. I personally love the elements, so I love to see how they flow through everything. Like to me, they are the basis of everything. The elements are the basics, and you have to build on that. So I love looking at that in this context, and also just seeing you weaving threads and like combining these passions together. I think really speaks to all that you are doing, what you've said. And I just like love exploring this with you. And I could talk to you about it for hours and hours. I feel like I still have so many questions, but I don't want to take all of your time. And I want people to connect with you also. So where can people find you?
Yeah. So my primary social media platform is Instagram. My handle is desired_constellations. And then you can find all of my resources, my classes, as well as my free resources on my website, chloe-margarita.com. I also write a weekly newsletter on Substack called Recent Bedroom, where you'll find a lot of more of my in-depth musings as well. So that's a little sampler platter to start with.
Yes, I think any of those are good. I love your writings. I think recent bedroom is great. And what is one thing you would love to leave our audience with, Chloe?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind, and because it's been such a journey of my life, and I think part of why I'm where I need to go is just like intuition, right? Our connection to the divine or the unseen is something we all have. And even if this world wants to explain it away or pretend it's not real, there's so much that like within yourself, and also how to like connect with the stars. It's just about trust. And so I just want to leave a way where like I don't think my experience with the stars or my intuition is special. I think I've just maybe done it a bit more than other people, but you can experience this magic. You can experience this vision and this connection to this world too. It's our birthright.
That is so much wisdom. I love that. I love hearing that just come through. And yeah, your intuition is everything. You can find these things. And we say this often too. Things sound silly, but I feel like that is also how you break through the matrix. In many ways, it's
No, it's true.
right, like believing the things that people say are silly. So thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for being here with us. Everybody, please go pre-order Chloe's book. It's coming out in November. Look at her courses, look at all of the stuff that she's done, buy her guides, all the things. She is so great. Book a consult, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much, Chloe.